You should be on page 4. We are going from standard form into slope-intercept form. For those of you who have had me the last 2 years, y'all should remember how to do this. For those of you who haven't, I'm sure you've seen it at some point. So here are 2 examples that have been done for us. These are the steps that we're going to go over. So these 4 are the 4 steps. And what they are move the x, change the sign, divide by the number in front of the y, don't forget to simplify. And literally you're going to do each one of these steps. So first step, move the x. Well, right now it's negative, so when it comes to the other side it's going to change signs. So negative will turn into a positive, and that's where that plus 4 came from. The next step says to divide by the number in front of the y. Well, remember that since this was a plus 2y, that means that this is positive, and what we're going to do is we're going to divide all these numbers by 2. Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1. That's where we got the y from. Remember the imaginary 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 4 divided by 2 is 2x. Now in math, we like to write it with the x first. This would be the slope-intercept form, because the slope comes first and then the y-intercept comes next. So from Monday's lesson, y'all should remember that the slope is the number in front of the x, which is 2, and the b is the number that's all by itself because it wants to be alone. So the answer for the slope and for the y-intercept is 5. Same thing happened on this one. Step 1 said to move the x. So I move the x and it turns from a positive 5 to a negative 5. Because this was a minus sign, this is now a negative 5y. If you'll remember here, this was positive, so it stayed a positive 2. So since this is a minus sign, this is now a negative 5. And what we'll do is we'll divide all of these by negative 5. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. Negative 15 divided by negative 5 is 3. Negative 1 divided by negative 5 divided by negative 5 will get you a positive 1. And remember to drop down the x. And remember, we want it in slope-intercept form, so this is why I put the x first. So what would the slope be? Remember, the slope is the number that's in front of the x, which is 1. And the b is the one that wants to be alone, so it's the number that's all by itself. Since that's a positive 3, then we're going to write 3. Had it been a minus 3, we would have put negative 3. So let's take a look at number 5. And for those of you who write big, you probably want to write a little bit small on this. Okay, same concept. We're going to take this x and we're going to move it. So we're going to circle the negative 7x and we're going to move it to the other side. Negative x becomes positive 7x. So it was negative 7x. Now it becomes positive 7x. So what's the number in front of the y? That's our next step. Remember, move the x, change the sign, divide by the number in front of the y. Don't forget to simplify. So we've done the first 2 steps. So now we got to divide by the number in front of the y. Well, the number in front of the y is technically a negative 1. So what we're going to do is divide all of these by negative 1. So this will reduce and you're left with y. If you want to, since you know that the x is going to be first, what you could do is automatically put the x first. So 7x divided by negative 1 is negative 7x. Negative 7 divided by negative 1 is a positive 7. So unlike the step over here where we just wrote it exactly like it was and then went to slope-intercept form, we just, from dividing, we went straight to slope-intercept form. So that's our answer. So let's do one more. So let's look at number 2. We have a positive 6x, so we're going to circle it. And remember, we go off the number in front of the 6x. We don't go with this negative. That negative or that minus sign goes with the 5y. So the 6x is going to move over, and now you're going to turn it to a negative 6x. So we've done step 1, move the x. We've done step 2, we've changed its sign. Step 3 is divide by the number in front of the y. Well, the number in front of the y is a negative 5. So that means I'm going to divide everything by negative 5. So this will reduce. And remember, we want the x to go first, so I'm going to do that one right away. And just in case you've forgotten, I'm just going to let the calculator do the work for me. So I'm going to go to the regular calculator, and I'm going to type in negative 6 divided by negative 5. And remember, we want this number a fraction, so we'll have to do math, enter, enter. So our fraction is a positive 6/5. So 6 over 5x. And then when I divide those two numbers, 35 divided by negative 5, I get a negative 7. So because it's a negative 7, I'm going to put minus 7. And that's slope-intercept form, and I'm going to box my answer. Since the directions do tell us to write it in slope-intercept form and then identify the slope and y-intercept, that's what we're going to go ahead and do now. On this one, our slope was the number in front of the x, and the b was the number that wants to be by itself, the number that's all by itself. So our slope in this problem is 6 over 5, and our y-intercept is negative 7. On the first problem we did, which I forgot to do, our slope is negative 7, and our b is positive 7.